This is Al from Albopepper.com. I'm here at the Penn Hills Community Garden. It's May 2nd. This is the first time I've been back since October when I planted all of this garlic. And as you can see, all of it came up. So, looks like we did something right. You can see on some of these how there are these yellow tips, and I did one variety at a time. It looks like it's only this first variety that experienced that. My theory is that that particular variety emerged sooner than the others, and so there was more of the leaf sticking out, and so it suffered from more frost damage, and thus some of that yellowing on the tips. But then as it warmed up, the rest of it emerged. The rest of the leaf is nice and healthy and doing well. So, but it seems to me that every single one of these came up, which is pretty cool. It's a lot of them. So we'll see how many pounds we actually get from this when everything's said and done. And now, today, it's June 2nd, and I return once again to the community garden to do some weeding. It's important if you want to maximize your yield with things like garlic, onions. When you look in there and you see these different weeds coming up, get them out of there, because that's competition, and that can diminish the actual yield that you get out of your garlic. So make sure you pull all that stuff out. And then I want to show you something else too. At a certain point, your garlic is going to send up what we call garlic scapes. And this right here is your garlic scape. From this is where eventually the plant will blossom and flower, and the generation of that process, many people feel, can draw energy from the bulb of the plant, and that bulb, of course, is what you're really wanting to harvest. So rather than allowing the garlic plant to put energy into that flowering system, which then results in seeds, instead, people commonly will actually cut that garlic scape. And by doing this, the plant can focus on developing its bulb, and at the same time, you get an edible part of the plant that you can saute, you can use in making perhaps a garlic butter. But you won't usually see these at a regular grocery store. But if you ever see these at farmers markets, or maybe you get them from co-ops, well, that's what these are, garlic scapes. And even if you don't use them yourself, still, most garlic growers will recommend cutting them off. So that's what I'm going to do now, because I can see that many of these plants already have them. And that wraps it up for today. I've cut all the ones that I could find on all the plants. I have 4 different varieties here, so some weren't ready yet, but I'll be returning to check on things, and everything's looking good so far. All right, yet another 4 weeks to the day has gone by. It's the last day of June, and here I am at the community garden plot again, and this is how the garlic's looking. There are multiple varieties, if you'll recall, that I planted, and when we look on this end, these varieties in particular that I put in, I mean, they've all started to die back. So looking at them at this point where they are, I'm going to be pulling these ones up, because most of the leaves have died and dried up, and now is the time for me to harvest this. And of course, it has just rained, so ordinarily I wouldn't really pick them right now. I'd wait till the soil had been dry. But that might not happen for 3 months, because it's just been raining like every single day, raining. So I'm not going to wait. I'm going to pull up this stuff. I don't make it here very often. So I'm going to take a look and see what we get. Well, I got about a dozen garlic plants pulled up, and then it was starting to rain. So I had to cut it short, but now I've come back a few days later and pulled up about half of the bed. Those plants that had been the most dried up, you can see how dried and dilapidated the tops of these plants look. You know, the brown leaves. That's when you know the bulb's not going to get any bigger. So it's time to pull it out, and that's what I've done here. So this shows minus 12 plants that are at home right now. This shows today what I've just pulled out, which covers half of this bed. And some of the bulbs are a little bit small, like you can see in relation to my hand. You know, this is one of the smaller ones. But we actually got some pretty nice sized bulbs. Here's one of the bigger ones. You can see here. So compared to that, so we've gotten a nice yield here at the community garden. We had 3 times the usual amount of rain, the average amount of rain in June, more than 10 inches of rainfall in just that 1 month, and too much moisture for things like garlic that can cause them to rot and stuff. So I am very glad that I at least have this in a raised bed for some improved drainage, which allowed them to be able to be sustained reasonably well. There is a little bit of some sign of some rotting going on these, so I'm gonna have to wait and see how many are really not viable, or maybe they just will have to get used up right away. They might not have much storage life in them, so I'll have to check that out. But excessive moisture is definitely going to be a culprit there. So when you're able to do these things in raised beds and give them good drainage, that's one of the best things that you can do to give them a fighting chance, along with just not over-watering. Water when they need it. Pay attention to what's going on in the soil. In this plot here, I have never watered this bed. I just never put any water on it, which is kind of cool. So, all right, I'll be pulling up more a little bit later. These plants still have some green growth on top. Not as many of the leaves have dried up, so I'll come back another day to get these ones. And then we'll be able to look and see what the overall yield is from the original 4 pounds of garlic I started with last year. So that should be exciting. All right, it's been a few more weeks. This is my last time coming out here to the community garden for a garlic harvest. These plantings are now completely ready to be pulled up. All the tops have all dried up, so you can see they're definitely due. So I'm going to start pulling them out right now, and we'll see what we get out of this spot. This is it. I finally got it all pulled up. The last bit from the community garden. And just to show how big some of the larger ones are, we've got some good size on some of these. This one here is a pretty nice size. So it's pretty cool. Some of these, you can see that they got a little bit too much moisture, so we'll see how well they fare. See how there's some of that going on. Doesn't really look that great. Maybe I might be able to use them up right away after I crack them open, see how they actually look inside. But one thing I wanted to show, whenever you are planting the cloves, if you have a clove that maybe actually has some bunches in it of smaller cloves, it might look like a single one, but in reality it may have a few inside. Well, when it emerges, what you're going to get is something like this. So instead of maybe one big bulb, you'll get a few small bulbs that are all bunched together. That was kind of interesting. I thought that I would show you that. But that's why we try to separate them properly and then space them out and hope that we can get the maximum size for the best yield. But now I just have to pull up this stuff at home, and that's going to wrap it up. When you're pulling up your garlic, you don't want to just yank on the stem. So you put your shovel in several inches away from where the bulb is and very gently just pry it upward so that you can kind of pop the bulb out a little bit. And there's going to be a big clump of dirt on it as well. And that's fine. Once the bulb is loose, you break off all the extra dirt, set the bulb aside, and you're done. Well, thanks for watching this, guys. Guess what? There's still one more video coming up. You're going to want to see how many pounds I actually did get from what I initially planted. So please subscribe if you haven't, and happy gardening.